Hi everyone, Chernobyl here with another Genshin Impact video. Today I'm showing a randomized run of Abyss Floor 12 against the version 2.3 enemy lineup. The RNG has graced me with Zhongli, Raiden, Ayaka, and Lisa on top half. Although the team is random, it has pretty nice Raiden synergy going on. First of all, we have Ayaka who has a very powerful 80 cost burst. And even with R3 Amenoma, as of the time of this recording, she has some mild energy issues, which Raiden is more than happy to resolve using her own burst. See what I did there? Unfortunately, no one on this team cares about physical damage, so the superconduct is pretty much wasted. Lisa also has an 80 cost burst, which comes with a highly appreciated defense shred. She can also give the Three Tails buff to either Raiden or Ayaka, all while enabling Electro Resonance for even more synergy. Zhongli, though, is kind of the odd one out here. He cannot provide Geo Resonance on his own, and his shield doesn't fully protect him from the hounds, because of corrosion. Also, Raiden already has super armor during the Musou Ishin state, so basically, in this case, a healer might have been more useful than Zhongli. Still, he is very welcome. He provides sizable meteors, as well as utility through petrifying enemies, and the Noblesse buff, and Favonius particles. Thanks to burst cycling, this team clears 12-1 reasonably fast, all while preserving Raiden and Ayaka's burst for the next chamber. On the bottom half, my randomized team is Aloy, Sayu, Xingqiu, and Mona. This team is kinda jank compared to my top team. In fact, I have never tried using Aloy in Abyss before, so this will be her great debut. You could say this team is Budget Morgana in some sense. Well, no, not quite Budget Morgana, more like Cardboard Morgana, with Mona being the only character from the actual Morgana team. Still, it does have access to Freeze, and Freeze is a very powerful reaction against the Hounds on 12-3 and 12-1, since it stops them from jumping all over the place, which is what makes them a pain to deal with. 12-1 isn't supposed to be a hard chamber, but my execution here is sloppy because I'm not accustomed to this team. For example, here I freeze the big Rift Hound using Aloy's burst, then immediately unfreeze it with Sayu because, oh yeah, I forgot that Claymores cause shatter. Oops. Later on in 12-3, you'll see that this team actually destroys Rift Hounds when executed properly. With his R5 sack sword, my Xingqiu gets E refreshed consistently. And that really packs a punch, especially if I get a good grouping. Although getting a good grouping isn't always possible with how the enemy AI moves. Here I use Sayu's burst to heal, but I release Sayu's E too quickly and miss, which is not good because I do not get any particles, and Sayu has mild energy issues already. Nevertheless, through sheer brute force and Xingqiu being Xingqiu, I squeak through with a very narrow clear. But the game thinks I took less than 3 minutes, so it gives me 3 stars even though it says 6:59. Whatever, I'll take it. In 12-2, I picked the attack buff, and I open with a quick Zhongli shield, followed by Lisa for TTDS, then Raiden, whose burst will refund my other bursts. Very convenient. And after that, it's just a matter of applying buffs, then pressing Q, until I win. These Geo Vishaps are a complete pushover, and they generally die in about 45 seconds once they eat enough charge attacks from Ayaka and from the Shogun. Here I use the charge attacks because they give me better AoE on these Geo Vishaps. And it's just as well that they die quickly, seeing as how I'm going to need all the time in the world for the disastrous trio in the next half. Oh boy, am I going to need a lot of time. I'll be honest, the first time I tried 12-2 bottom with this team, I party wiped without taking down even half a member of this trio. I almost gave up instantly, thinking it couldn't be done. Remember how I said this team is like Cardboard Morgana? Well, Morgana is a freeze team, and these Kenkis cannot be frozen or taunted. So maintaining any amount of grouping is going to be a huge headache. So if even Morgana, a top tier team, struggles against the Kenki Trio, what hope does this team have? What hope? Well, there is one hope. There is a single ray of hope, and that is my Xingqiu is cracked. I mean, I think I'm not exaggerating when I say that I'm an F2P with a whale level Xingqiu. That's how much I've invested into him. So a big part of figuring out this run was analyzing the grouping such that if not all 3, then how can I at least hit 2 of the Maguu Genkis at once with Xingqiu's E? And also, since Xingqiu's Q does not snapshot, that means I have to maximize uptime on all my damage buffs. So that includes Omen, that includes Wolf's Gravestone, Elegy, which is at Refine 2, and also VV and Noblesse. Another thing that really helps is practicing mashing spacebar, which I know sounds really silly, but it is something that I have to do every time I use Xingqiu's E inside the cryo field, and it really helps to be mentally prepared for that. After all, I don't have a cleanser like Bennett on this team. So, one more Delve into Destiny from Mona takes down the Lone Gale. And now, since I know that the Galloping Frost will follow me to the ends of the earth, I rush over to the Mask of Terror, and now it's time to just focus fire. Here I unfortunately get caught by the very edge of the cryo field as I have to mash spacebar one more time. And now I get the Elegy buff along with Wolf's Gravestone and VV, setting myself up for some nice DPS time. A Mona's Burst powered by Wolf's Gravestone will kill the Galloping Frost, and that leaves only the Mask of Terror, who, without his companions, poses no threat. So now it's just a matter of maintaining high DPS via buffs until I can finish him off. After about 30 attempts, I earn another narrow victory, clocking in at an uncomfortable, yet still adequate 703. With the toughest fight out of the way, I expect 12-3 to be smooth sailing for the most part. The one thing I have to watch out for is that my top team is low on health, and Zhongli's shield does not block corrosion. I start by using Zhongli's burst, then Lisa's burst, and then Raiden's Shogun's burst. Even at C0, the Shogun is easily able to dispatch these robots in a single burst duration with her powerful charge attacks. After the 2 robots are torn to oblivion, I switch to Zhongli and petrify one of the hounds. By keeping it petrified, I make sure that it does not escape Ayaka's burst for most of its duration. Then I apply TTDS and another Raiden's burst at about 60% resolve, which does a nice 129k. That really shows how weak these hounds are against their own element once their resistance has been debuffed. Of course, there is a trade-off. They also become more agitated and will attack more often. But that doesn't really matter as long as I'm chain staggering them with Raiden. It also helps that corrosion does not apply during burst animation. With this team and its rapid energy generation, I'm constantly throwing burst after burst, which is a nice form of defense. Another Lisa burst to shred defense, and here I make a minor blunder and waste some time on Ayaka when I could just use Raiden's burst off cooldown. Winning against the Kenkis has instilled in me newfound confidence in this ragtag team. More importantly, it has instilled in me the knowledge of how to pilot this team more effectively. In contrast to my embarrassing floundering on 12-1, notice how here I am actually taking advantage of freeze reactions to extend Mona's Omen duration and ensure good grouping, especially when it comes to Xingqiu's E's. Also, here I know that the Geo Aura is coming, so I use burst iframes to avoid some portion of the damage. Of course, Sayu can't just heal the damage, but since she is at C0, her Daruma cannot heal and attack simultaneously, so defense is also a form of offense here. Also, I'm fighting these hounds near the wall to limit their mobility, thereby making it easier to freeze them all at once. And there goes the last Rift Hound. These last 2 Rune Guards are basically just a formality, since I'm not running a physical comp. I run up between their feet, and here unfortunately I get the EM buff from Witsith, which is useless in a freeze comp, and her burst only does 80k damage, but that will be more than enough. Because I stay near their feet, they jump around at the same time, and therefore remain grouped, facilitating my task of keeping them frozen together with Alo. Another Wolf's Gravestone proc, another Omen from Mona, and they're almost dead. I keep them frozen just to make sure they do not spin. That could potentially be a big waste of time. And there we go. That's another 9 stars. Thank you for watching my randomized Abyss run. I'm going to let my builds play in the background while I talk. So if you watched my run and felt amused or inspired, then great, I'm happy for you. If you watched it and felt hopelessness because of the barrier of artifact farming, then perhaps you may have taken the wrong takeaway. Yes, artifacts matter, and yes, I have been playing since launch, so my pieces are pretty good. But the thing is, artifact farming has very diminishing returns. So after your first 3 months, you should not expect artifact farming to double your damage. That's just not going to happen. You know what does double your damage though? Hitting 2 enemies instead of 1. Except for single target boss fights, grouping is and has always been the single most important factor for success in Spiral Abyss. Alright, good luck with your rolls and Happy New Year. This is Chernobyl signing out.